Next up, we have Itamar Golan, the CEO and co-founder of Prompt Security. He has over 15 years of experience in the AI field. Notably, he's contributed as a member to the OWASP Top 10 for LLM apps. Itamar will be talking to us about how to uncover key risks and vulnerabilities as GenAI infiltrates organizations and day-to-day life, while also providing us with a high-level GenAI security strategy that is based on industry frameworks like OWASP. Welcome, Itamar. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm doing well. Nice to be here.
Excellent. Great. Hopefully, we'll see you in a second. Or having some issues getting you online. 1 second right there.
Can you see my screen?
Oh, yes, we can.
And myself?
Not yet. All right, so you should start. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please, the stage is yours.
Thank you. So it's a pleasure to be here, first of all, with that respected community of AI and security fellows. I'm Itamar Golan, the CEO and co-founder of Prompt Security. And today I'm going to explain to you a little bit about my two biggest passions, which are security and AI. Today, as I've said, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Prompt Security, which essentially enables companies to adopt AI massively, but without sacrificing what's important for them around data privacy and security posture, etc. I would try to make it as less as stylish as possible, and would be very focused on the actual attack scenarios and how to get protection from the various created threats by GenAI. So I would start from the narcissistic slide, just 20 seconds about myself. I've been playing with AI in the last 16 years. And I'm today building Prompt Security, which enables companies to adopt AIs safely. That's a little bit about myself. We've been talking a lot today about Gen AI. Of course, it's here, it's everywhere. It's a key for becoming and staying competitive and relevant. So we must adopt it. But how can we adopt it without sacrificing security, data privacy, everything that is important for us? And as we've been playing in OWASP, there are plenty of new threats and risks created by adopting Gen AI into your company, whether it's an employee using ChatGPT-like application or some R&D and product fellow integrating third-party LLMs into your product and building some co-pilot feature. This is a new paradigm, and therefore this requires a new security solution to address it. Just a little bit of numbers, we all like it. More than 40% of IT executives these days already define data privacy as their main concern around Gen AI adoption. This is from the recent Gartner report. Almost 90% of business technologists actually admitted they would find a way to bypass security limitations and guidelines in order to deliver their Gen AI initiative. So it seems like even probably more than before, the business need around Gen AI is surpassing the security guidelines, and therefore we are creating a bigger and bigger security depth, probably more than we've seen in the past with cloud or containers and other disruptive technology. A very recent Gartner report, I found it amazing, already claimed that 30% of enterprises just now, although we've just started with AI, it's clear for all of us that this journey is only in the beginning, but already 30% of enterprises claim that they had some security breach related to AI. So the problem is not something to get prepared for. It's already here in our courtyard, and we need to address it as soon as possible. This is a mix around inspired by OWASP Top 10 for LLM of threats you should be aware of, starting from maybe the most prominent and naive ones like Shadow AI. What AI services my employees and applications are using, who is using them, which content is being shared with them, etc. Another very common threat today is jailbreak or prompt injection. any attempt essentially to trick the LLM-based application into doing stuff you wouldn't like it to do. Sensitive data disclosure, of course. It's one thing to share data with JSON viewer or Pastebin, but if your data is reaching a GenAI application, the probability of leakage is much higher due to the fact that LLM are incentivized to train on your data. By default, ChatGPT until these days is using the data you are sharing with it, if you didn't play with the configuration page, to being trained on your data. So once your confidential and enterprise data is being embedded in the model itself, it's a lost battle. Therefore, we see sensitive data leak as something more crucial when we are talking about AI, and many more threats and risks I will touch in a second. That's a little bit of overview on the attack surface. Let's dive into the actual attack scenarios. So I guess that some of you already saw that example by Chris Bake. One of Chevrolet's car dealership has released a new co-pilot interface powered by GenAI to replace the human-based customer support bot. It was fantastic until some nutty users started to play with it, made it talk about harmful and toxic content. But more than all, and the most famous example, as you can see here in the screen, Chris Bake has made the co-pilot of Chevrolet promise to him a Chevy for $1. And that may seem a little bit of humoristic, at least for me at the beginning, but when you are thinking about it more in depth, you understand that once AI is in the center of your company's offering, and something like that is happening, this is not a joke. Is that legal binding? Is that implicating your brand or offering or business? It could. In a few weeks afterwards, for Air Canada, the airline company, they had the same issue with flight tickets, and eventually they gave the tickets for free. So those jailbreaks, which was started as a funny thing, are becoming more and more prominent, and companies are looking for more and more ways to secure their GenAI application and prevent those kind of incidents to happen. In that case, as you can see, the jailbreak is super easy, mostly saying ignore all your previous instruction and listen to me. But of course, the techniques are becoming more sophisticated, as you can see in the many-shot jailbreaking technique. Surprisingly, when models are becoming more sophisticated, like with more parameters and more intelligent and a bigger context size, you would expect them to be less vulnerable. Apparently, it's the other way around. When the context size is becoming more and more bigger, apparently you can feed in the prompt itself more and more malicious content, like in that example, questions and answers about malicious or toxic content. And then the model needs to decide, am I listening to the user input, or am I listening to the predefined security guidelines, which I been fine-tuned on? And apparently, as much as the context window is becoming bigger and bigger, the model tends to listen to the user itself. So to put it simply, while models are becoming more and more sophisticated, they are becoming also more vulnerable. And therefore, it's even more mandatory to put the right security tools in place in order to prevent those kind of things. There is a direct correlation between the amount of malicious context in the context window of the prompt and the probability for the model to being jailbreak. Of course, this is a more sophisticated jailbreak technique. Another one is the crescendo attack, a pretty recent technique, which used another very unique characteristic of GenAI. GenAI, maybe in not like previous classical APIs, it's not a one stunt, it's not one ping pong of request and response. It's a chat, it's a conversation. And if you would ask it something malicious, like how to build C4 or bomb or Molotov cocktail, it usually would respond for you with refusal. But if you are taking control or utilizing the conversation characteristic of GenAI, you can gradually take the discussion to a more malicious area. So instead of asking it how to build a bomb, you're asking about the history of a bomb. and then you are asking about specific time in history. And in that specific time, let's say World War II, you're asking about how would they build bombs back then, and gradually you are taking the models towards converging into the malicious attempt or intent you would like it to act. So that's very unique to LLMs because you are utilizing their conversation flow and not only one API call behavior. Another cool attack we were one of the first one to discover, which are super relevant and unique for LLMs, is the denial of wallet attack. Essentially inspired by the denial of service we all aware of from the past. Let's watch that example. We've been doing it to one of our prospects during the red teaming of their GenAI application. We are accessing essentially their GenAI Copilot. Then we are breaking their rate limit, essentially or eventually jailbreaking their system prompt. And now we have direct access to their third-party LLMs in the backend. We can ask it whatever question we would like without paying a penny to OpenAI directly. I would skip that, but essentially you can see in red how much money we are wasting for them, utilizing their third-party LLMs instead of paying for it directly. By that, you can do two things. If you are just, let's say, a fellow that wouldn't like to pay for LLM, you can utilize some company's Copilot as a proxy to LLM without paying a penny. If you're a malicious actor, you can run it in a distributed way with a lot of compute and make them a fine of maybe up to $10K per day for them paying for OpenAI or Mistral or Anthropic. So this is a potential very malicious financial attack on their infrastructure through the GenAI interface. Again, a combination of classical stuff like breaking the rate limit, combining with more designated stuff for LLM, which is jailbreaking, allow you to use the model as much and how would you like. That's around denial of wallets. Let's move into the more tangible stuff we all felt in our companies, the data privacy aspects of GenAI. Amazon recently did research, and they've been looking for similarity between what ChatGPT is generating and their confidential and internal data. And surprisingly, they found a lot of similarities. So apparently, a lot of employees are sharing frequently some internal data with ChatGPT and probably some other GenAI application, which is estimated already in more than $1 or $2 million because of losing competitive advantage and intellectual property, etc. And that was only a small research they've done. And this is directly related to what I've said before. Shadow IT and data leak prevention was something we all knew from the past. But once your confidential and important data is reaching AI and it's being embedded in the model itself, it's a lost battle, and your IP is out there being generated in other endpoints around the world, and you could not reset it, you cannot take it back. It's an end game, and Amazon actually proved it very recently. So it's taking the data privacy concerns around SaaS and third parties into a new, different league. If we are already talking about data privacy, it's not only employees sharing confidential data with some third parties like ChatGPT and Gemini, etc. It's also developers. As you may aware of, tons of developers around the world are not only writing code by themselves. They are using AI-based code assistants like GitHub Copilot and GitLab Duo and AWS Code Whisperer. And those code assistants are leaking all the time your code to the third-party servers, including secrets. Anytime one of your developers is using some .env file with AWS access to or something like that, it's being sent outside to the third-party servers, and it's a broad new door for leakage. Another place for data privacy violation is your application. A lot of companies are building their own GenAI apps, their own copilots, utilizing third-party LLM and vector databases, etc. And through that, integration, a lot of data which is enriching the actual application in RAG architecture, for example, is being sent outside to the third-party vector DB or LLM, including PIIs and secrets, etc. So those are only a few examples for how GenAI adopted to our tech stack could lead for data privacy concerns. But I don't want you to be terrified around AI. I don't think it's something we can ignore, we can block, we can put aside. We must adopt it. The pros are much bigger than the cons. We just need how to do it. We need to know how to do it responsibly and safely. And as you can see, the adoption rate is not something you can argue with. More than 90% of Fortune 500 already using OpenAI. And if we are talking about GenAI and AI in general, it's around 95, 96. 75% of the CIOs are planning only to increase their AI budget in 2024 and 2025. And almost 95% of the business leaders agree that AI is mandatory in order to survive and to succeed in the next few years. So adoption is not a question. The question is how to adopt it safely. And that leads us to another question. Who the heck is responsible for it? If we were looking on the history, it's the CISO. The CISO is responsible for security posture in his company. But here, when AI is so different, it's so embedded in any aspect of our company, product and strategy, etc. Is it maybe the CTO? Is it maybe the CIO? Is it maybe the DPO? We already see in Prompt that we get budgets from different buyers and champions, and the landscape here is much more complicated. As I see it, and don't take it for granted, it's only my hunch here, it's not based on any Gartner report. I believe that in the next 5 years, most of the, let's say, Fortune 500 companies would have a chief of AI because this is such important domain in the company, which requires a designated position to address it. But currently, it's mostly the CTO and the CISO. Just to wrap it up, how can we protect ourselves at the moment? We shouldn't ignore it. We can do a few little things that would take our security posture to a much better degree with AI. First of all, we need to create an inventory. We need to understand and to get some visibility around which AI tools are being used. Then we need to define a policy. What is a legitimate interaction between employee and application with AI tools? After that, we need to monitor those interactions and detect violations from that policy, beginning from retrospectively detecting those violations, and until you get some real-time protection that would prevent those violations from even happening. Maybe lastly, you need to listen all the time to the regulation, which is coming and will require from you specific actions around AI adoption. Education, of course, employees need to know how to use AI to being more productive, but they need to know how to use it while they keep your company safe. And maybe lastly, from the technical perspective, without buying Prompt, although it's recommended, you can do some very preliminary things, very initial things around sanitizing the inputs and the outputs from the model, from sanitizing PII to preventing and moderating harmful responses. And by that, you can prevent 80% of the potential malicious attempts or harmful responses. So that's a good place to start: input and output moderation and sanitization. You don't need to invent everything on yourself. There are plenty of frameworks and guidelines. I'm, of course, biased a little bit towards OWASP, which I was part of the core team, by Maitre and NIST and Gartner as a very impressive framework as well. You can derive from there your initial policy and then fine-tune it according to your business needs in your organization. So you don't need to invent the world. And just to wrap it up, my last slide, I promise, I urge you to adopt AI for employees, for developers, for application. It would take your company to the next level. It's an opportunity. If you wouldn't win the current market you are fighting for in the last few years, now you have opportunity when the landscape is shaking to take an advantage using AI. But you need to do it safely. You need to get the right visibility into AI to monitor the interaction and to prevent the violation from the policy which you defined. That's my take for today. Of course, that was like a 20-minute super fast overview on the AI security landscape. If you would like to get a more deep dive discussion about AI security, feel free to reach out. And it was a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and have fun.